This presentation is focused on SDG number 2, which is zero hunger. The UN created these goals to help our nation improve on certain areas and topics. Our group wanted to focus on the Tampa Bay area and see what we could do to end world hunger and food insecurity in the Tampa Bay area. This presentation was created by Alexis Knight, Autumn Kennard, Ethan Jean Lewis, and Jenny Gellin. This presentation is broken down into a few different sections. First, we will take you through the background of the issue at hand. We will define a few key terms and we'll give you information about what food insecurity is and how it affects the Tampa Bay area. Next, we will discuss a more centralized issue, which is how food insecurity affects single mothers in the Tampa Bay area. We'll give you a few reasons on how that happens and why we chose that topic. We then will give you some historical background on hunger and how it has been a constant issue within our timelines. We also want to discuss how Christianity has affected hunger. We then will give some solutions to the issue and how we believe we can fix the historical issue of hunger. Before we get started with all the details, we wanted to give you a little summary of what our presentation will be talking about. Food insecurity has been a prevalent issue within all of society from before we knew it. Our group wants to focus on an area that is important to us and that people we see and interact with every day. And instead of researching the whole population, we want to focus on the group that is more affected by food insecurity, single mothers. We also wanted to see if there was any way that Christianity could help with the issue at hand and what they currently do to help those in need. This issue spreads farther than just our city, but we can start here and work our way to a bigger project. Being able to understand the knowledge that you are retaining is very important to us, so we wanted to define all of the important terms that we will be talking about within this presentation. The first term we are going to discuss is food insecurity. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services defines food insecurity as a household-level economic and social condition of limited or uncertain access to adequate food. We define this as households are not sure whether they will eat or eat good food at any given time due to money issues, geological issues, or economic issues. Hunger is the next word that we're going to discuss. Everyone believes that they know the exact definition of it, but I feel like it has multiple different definitions. And according to Actions Against Hunger, they define hunger as the distress associated with the lack of food. We translated this to hunger occurs when a person is without food for an extended period of time and causes distress. Most of the definitions are pretty similar. When researching information for our paper, we learned that single mothers are the largest population that experiences poverty and food insecurity. With that being said, we thought it was a good idea to harness our research to that topic to see if there was any way to try and alleviate that percentage. According to a site that dedicates their research to trying and helping children in need, One More Child, 80% of single mothers do not bring in enough money to provide for their families. This creates food insecurity because those mothers have to pick and choose what they're going to provide for the family, whether that be food, a home, clothes, toiletries, and any other necessities needed to live. This creates a lot of stress on that mom and child, which can then cause other issues within life, like school and work hardships. In the Tampa Bay area, the average income in 2019 for a single mother was $25,703. Now, we all know the living cost in Tampa is very high, and from my own personal experience, the rent for an apartment can range from $1,800 to $2,500 a month. If we go to the lowest amount, those moms would be paying $21,600 a year, which only leaves $4,103 to spend on everything else they need to survive and provide for their child. Living expenses create a large hardship for these moms, and finding food or healthy food options might be difficult for them to do. On this slide, you will see factors that contribute to food insecurity in the Tampa Bay area. Our first factor is low income. 600,000 plus families across the Tampa Bay area are living paycheck to paycheck. 7% of households with children in Hillsborough County are headed by single mothers. With this being said, low income creates a lot of difficulties for these mothers. As stated on the previous slide, mothers have to figure out how to distribute their income and still provide for their families. Most of these factors that are going to be discussed all tie together in some way. The next issue is the cost of living. The cost of living has gone up drastically from times that our parents know. They're always talking about how when you went to McDonald's, you could buy a burger for 10 cents. Nowadays, those things cost $3 to $5. At grocery stores, it costs a lot more to buy a full meal for families, even if it's just two people. The next issue is population. The Tampa Bay area is a very growing community. The population increases day by day. The next issue is what we call a food desert. Tampa Bay area has just been created as a food desert. This means it's an area with limited access to affordable and nutritious foods. There are plenty of mini marts around, but no traditional grocers that offer a steady supply of fresh food and produce in the area. Our next factor is the economical circumstances. We obviously all know that our economy has risen drastically over the years, and that has not slowed down very much. This creates a lot of the other issues that has been talked about previously. The next issue that is not listed on here, but I wanted to mention, was climate change. Back-to-back Hurricane Helene and Milton created a very large issue with rising ocean temperatures and have had a historical effect on agricultural production in the Tampa Bay area. Rising production costs and have led to rising food prices and fewer food options. On this slide, you'll see a visual representation of what we call a food desert. On the last slide, we discussed how food deserts affect families. They create very limited options for mothers and other families to provide for their family, including very limited options or options that are not healthy for those families. Tampa Bay also became a food desert not very long ago, and as this map shows, there are a lot of red, which shows you a food desert and low accessibility to supermarkets. This creates a lot of issues that tie into the food insecurity issues that we are discussing.
Defining the feminization of hunger and poverty. The food insecurity experienced by single mothers is a long-standing issue that is deeply rooted in historical and socioeconomic factors, particularly the phenomena referred to as the feminization of poverty and hunger. The Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe characterizes the feminization of poverty as a higher incidence of poverty among women compared to men, noting that not only do women face greater severity of poverty, but the rates are also on the rise. Conversely, the feminization of hunger mirrors this definition. However, it specifically highlights the disproportionate vulnerability of women to hunger relative to men. These dynamics underscore the systemic inequalities that contribute to both food insecurity and economic disadvantage among single mothers. Historical roots of gender inequities in food access. The historical roots of gender inequities in food access can be traced back to centuries of societal structures that excluded women from economic and social opportunities. One significant event was the Industrial Revolution, which prompted large numbers of men to migrate to urban areas in search of work. This left many women behind, tasked with managing households and overseeing agricultural responsibilities, often under constrained circumstances with limited resources and support. Another crucial factor was a restricted access to education for women during the 19th century. Societal norms and limited opportunities often confined women to domestic roles. According to Feminization of Poverty by the Boston College High School Model UN Conference, later in the 19th century, access to education was not easy for women, and employment opportunities sectioned numerous women to domestic roles, perpetuating their economic vulnerability. This lack of educational attainment further restricted their employment options, leading to economic instability and dependence. Employment opportunities for women were often limited to domestic service, which typically offered low wages and few prospects for advancement. The local impact of the phenomenon on Tampa Bay. As these historical structures of exclusion and gender discrimination persisted into the following centuries, they continue to affect women's ability to access stable employment and adequate income. In Tampa Bay, this trend persists where single mothers, often head of households, face higher rates of food insecurity. As noted in the USF dissertation on Pinellas County, over 50% of single mothers found to be food insecure and another third were considered at risk for food insecurity. This data highlights how the historical trends of gender inequality and economic marginalization continue to affect food security today.
For this project, we're discussing marginalized people that suffer from hunger, with a special focus on single mothers. In the Bible, marginalized people of all circumstances are seen as deserving of compassion. An analysis of food insecurity through the lens of Christianity offers valuable insight into how SDG number 2 can be actualized for single mothers and beyond. In Christianity, generosity towards marginalized groups reflects God's call for justice and provision for the needy. We can say this because the Bible frequently calls on followers to feed the hungry, such as in Matthew 25:35, where Jesus says, "For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat." With this sentence, Jesus is reminding Christians that it's important to be mindful of how they respond to people in need. Christianity, as a religion, emphasizes the importance of helping those in need, especially the hungry. Additionally, passages like Proverbs 19:17, which says, "Whoever is generous to the poor lends to the Lord," reinforce the idea that acts of charity are not only beneficial to the recipients, but also spiritually rewarding for the giver and gratifying to God. These teachings reflect the theological principle of biblical stewardship, which encourages Christians to use their resources wisely and generously serve others with the things given to them by God. By viewing compassion and charity as fundamental parts of their faith, many are inspired to take action against hunger in their communities. So, when analyzing the issue of hunger and the goal of zero hunger on a global scale, we can cite the work of advocacy organizations as a solution to the problem. These organizations are also called lobby groups or sometimes interest groups, and a plethora of them are working behind the scenes to tackle the root causes of hunger, whether that be low income, cost of living, or any other factor mentioned earlier in the presentation. By advocating for policy changes, these organizations strive to create a more sustainable and just solution to food insecurity, aiming to prevent hunger before it begins. Existing institutions, such as our country's federal government, have the power to enact widespread changes if encouraged and prompted by organizations like these. An example of one of these organizations is Bread for the World, a nonpartisan Christian advocacy organization that advocates for policy changes to end hunger in the United States and abroad.